Hey, yo, what's good, everybody? Let's get right into it. My name is Professor Lyrical. You can see the writer shirt. I'm an MC. If you're not familiar with me, I've been a rapper for like forever. I'm also an educator. I teach math. I'm an associate professor, and I've done a lot of adjunct teaching. Probably taught 150 to 60 college courses and many years of high school as well in my home city of Lowell, Massachusetts. I got to go to both Lowell Public Schools and Chelmsford Public Schools at a young age. Graduated from Chelmsford High School and then later UMass Lowell with both my bachelor's and my master's, and later Northeastern University with my doctorate, where I also taught for 7 years in the foundation year program. Now I'm at UDC, which is a historically black college and university. It's the only public land grant. It's the only public in DC, but it's public land grant with a crazy background and how it came to be the University of District of Columbia. So enough about that, enough about me. What I really want to talk about is people that look like me, though. Right now more than ever, and it's something that I really want to say. So I've been doing a lot of talks, podcasts, these kind of things with people about whiteness and what it means to speak in these times, and what I think would be helpful. And one thing I really want to enunciate clearly is that I don't think white people are doing enough. I don't think people that are privileged are doing enough to talk about that privilege and to call a light to it. To try to help either level the playing field or at least put a few things out there that may wrinkle the feathers of some other white people. So here's one of them. If you are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is that you're on, right, and you're engaged in a conversation and somebody jumps in on that and they're a troll. I got plenty of trolls, and I wouldn't even call them trolls. They don't have to be trolls. Just people with dissenting agreements that are throwing salt in your posts, and you feel the need to cancel them and you don't want to hear them, and they haven't really talked in a way that is 100% like blatantly disrespectful. Like you might disagree with it, but you're not giving them that forum to speak their mind, and you just let them go off and you just cancel them, and nobody else gets to really see or hear or comment on that as well. Is that really helping? And my answer would be I don't think so. And I get that there's a point that we all got to get to when we say, hey, that's just patently disrespectful. I'm not going to allow that kind of talk on my page. Whatever, that's all good. I'm not talking about that though. I'm talking about when somebody gets on and they have maybe a underpinning of a taint of white supremacy in their talk, or racism, what it may be, and it's not overt, right? Because a lot of people, I think white people confuse racism that it has to be overt and in your face, right? I now live just outside DC. I live in a beautiful little community here, as you can maybe see behind me. I'm in Alexandria, Virginia, and in DC, or in the South here, we're just kind of over the borderline by a bit of what is the South. People in the East will commonly say Boston, be like, at least it's not the South. But I would say, at least it's not the East, because the East, you got this kind of covert racism and this coded language where people don't say it to your face, but they say it behind the scenes. And similarly, what happens is, it's good to know where you stand, right? It's good to know if it's overt, right? And you see a little bit more overt racism in the South, right? But at the end of the day, what's the difference if your access is being denied and there's two different standards and the playing field is not level, right? Like, at least you know who your enemies are, right? And when you're in the more South, and I'm not saying this is the worst. You can get a lot more hardcore than what we are. That's for sure. I mean, what we are is actually pretty decent as far as I can tell, right? But when you do a little digging, when you go just under the surface, even on these Facebook and social media posts, what you'll see. I got plenty of friends who would call themselves allies or whatever it is, but they're not saying anything publicly. They let it slide, man. They will comment to me. I got an inbox. If I could share my inbox and not people on blast and talk about how aghast we are about the stuff that's happened, right, since before George Floyd, right, and after, and the way that their friends and peers and coworkers are talking, it's full with that. I become like some sort of a dumping ground, I guess, for some of that, right, because people know that I'm speaking about it publicly. So they may not feel comfortable to speak publicly, and I understand that pressure, because there's some white supremacy affects white people too. Like, we're scared of the privilege, we're scared of maybe losing it, or we're scared of speaking out at the workplace or whatnot. And I get that, that's real. I'm not saying everybody has to be all up in somebody's face, but at a minimum, if you're not comfortable enough calling out a post when you see it on your own page, let alone on somebody else's page, and speak out against it, and you're just sort of behind the scenes talking about your outrage of it, where are we really getting? Because that's justifying and being complicit in the situations that are happening. So if we're calling for officers who we feel are complicit in the George Floyd case, for one, and I do agree to that as well, shouldn't we be at least holding people accountable for what they say, to check them? I'm not saying cancel them. What does canceling them do? They just go spray the vermin elsewhere. You have an impact looking like them, right? More so. and disagreeing with them, you have an impact. And that's that kind of, white supremacy in reverse kind of thing, because they'll probably have tougher time disagreeing with you. At least they might be open to it, where they wouldn't be open to it coming from somebody who looks different than you. And really, quite honestly, it shouldn't be the job of black and brown people to be the crusaders for anti-racism and activism, which we know it usually is, right? But we start all this talk about allyship, which is a funny term in itself, and there's plenty of literature out there about is that really even the right terminology? But the terminology aside, it hints at the fact that, there's a good article recently about this, hinting, which is something I've always felt, which is that's the wrong term in the first place. Like ally with what? Like it should be the other way around, right? Like white people know this is going on. We don't have to be allies. We should be the ones instigating and leading the charge to call out, racism, hypocrisy where we see it. We're the ones with less to lose, less to lose. We don't have lives to lose usually as a result of this, right? We might have some, discomfort to lose, or, we might have people in our family or our friends not see eye to eye with us, and it might get uncomfortable at Thanksgiving and so forth, But really, we're the ones that have less to lose, and we should be more active. Why would you not want to lower or level the field, I should say, in a white supremacist world? Are you happy with your accomplishments if you know that other people have been, starting behind the finish line when you're starting at the starting line, and they're like 10 yards back and you're running the race? Like, are you happy about that? Like, you feel proud about that? At a minimum, you should be looking for it everywhere you can, so that your accomplishments aren't discredited, so that your achievements aren't something that you have to be like, well, yeah, I kind of achieved that, but then again, no, you know that access to higher education, or the quality, K through 12 education is lower. We know that property tax is a problem, that is segregation in its realest form, dictating what our schools look like and how well funded they are. That's BS, right? Call it out whenever you have the chance. And I'm saying call out people when you see them doing this on social media, because it shouldn't be left to the typical quote unquote crusaders who are usually, or Black Lives Matter or whatever, what have you. It shouldn't just be groups that are predominantly led by people of color that are doing this. So call out your own friends, call out your own family, as uncomfortable as it may be. That's the smallest price you can pay to help in something that you should be seeing that for generations has not been fixed. It's easy to look like I do and sit back and say, you know what, like things are improving. Are they improving fast enough? Have enough lives been lost? Have enough people been humiliated, ridiculed, denied access, barred from entry, outside of the club, so to speak? Like when do you call BS, right? When do you call it out around you and start to not be a coward and call it out for where it is? And speaking of which, I'm going to call out directly one group that is on social media, that is on Facebook, that is a private group, and I don't think the intentions were malice. And again, I'll preface this with, it's easy for me to say, as someone with the privilege of having a reliable income stream, and being generally okay, right? So it's easy for me to say, I'll acknowledge that privilege. Will you acknowledge the privilege if you're inside of the Reopen Mass group? Have you looked inside of that group? If you haven't, I encourage you to do so. Counteract the BS. When I say BS, I don't mean the sentiments. I understand the real sentiment of losing a job and, waiting for, if you work in a restaurant, you're a frontline worker or whatnot, it may be different. But if you're one of these jobs that depends upon, public patronage to actually, make a living, I get it. It's a real frustration. But when that frustration turns into white supremacist like lingo, and the words become racist, and it becomes a disrespectful way of talking to one another in these posts, which, by the way, a bylaw said that shouldn't happen, and it goes somewhat unchecked as far as I can tell. I've been in there for a couple months. This seems to be a straight one-to-one overlap in terms of the Venn diagram of white supremacist or privilege, which is a close cousin to the same word. I mean, they're almost one and the same, except one sounds worse than the other, right? And with those in the COVID-19 reopen movement believing it's all a great hoax. Is that because the conservative Republican top level person thinks that is the battle cry, that it should be that COVID-19 is a hoax? Or is it because of something else? Is wearing a mask so much of a problem to you that you think that this is an affront to your civil liberties? Like, first it's a mask and then it's communism? But yet we're not calling out people that are supportive of Putin, right? Like, where does the BS end, right? Like, it's hypocrisy at its finest, and the language becomes veiled and vile when somebody suggests something like, well, maybe that's not what the data is showing. First of all, science is changing all the time. It's in flux. So people trying to say scientists don't know and experts don't know. No, they actually do know. They know enough to wait to see what the data says, but we're in this rush and crunch and everyone wants data. You're going to see some data that's less than typically reliable that it usually is, and it will get checked by the peer process, at least in time. So yeah, it's confusing times. We're dealing with a pandemic. Nobody has all the answers. Scientists aren't supposed to magically have all the answers. So to criticize the quote-unquote experts and use the quote-unquote tag as a dismissive term, right, and to say that suddenly you, and check who you are too, like what is actually your science and math background, or what is your health background, because you read a couple posts on Facebook and that you want to hit like next to, that you're now suddenly an expert we should listen to because you have one piece of very partisan data that you want to put out, and when data is usually not data, it's usually just opinion pieces that are being flaunted as concrete expert fact, right? And then we deny fact checkers, we deny the media, we deny that there's other, it's this question of, is there an objective or subjective truth? And I would argue that sort of the subjective reality that we're in now has kind of blurred the lines, and people now vent and they get into these rooms, but what happens is you see the white supremacy come up. The language is coded. Sometimes it's very overt, and I would say it is unbelievable the amount of privilege that goes on in these rooms. I get the sentiment of being frustrated, but the amount of white males and females in there screaming about the fact they have to wear a mask. Nobody's screaming about having to wear a construction hat on a site when there's less than 1% of people ever getting harmed in the head at a construction site. Nobody's complaining about having to put on a seatbelt, right? Nobody's complaining about stopping at a stoplight, but yet putting on a mask, it's a great affront to my civil liberties. Like, you snowflake, right? Talking about the progressive left as being snowflakes. Seriously? Yo, shut up is what we all want to say to you. So I'm saying it, close your mouth and read a paper, okay? If you're frustrated and you're mad and upset, don't vent on the rest of the world by attacking them with slurs and doing whatever you need to do and cursing all the time. Close your mouth, listen to others, and if you disagree respectfully. Keep your privilege in check. That's where I want to leave it. Peace.